Hi, my name is Susan Wymer, and I'm here with a video for Picket Fence Studio stamps. We are going to be using the beautiful rose bouquet. I didn't get the footage with the actual stamp set, but it's beautiful, and I'll have a link to it below in the description box. And we're going to make this card using a sketch from freshly made sketches from the week of October 1st. So I'm going to start off by treating my paper with an embossing buddy and stamping on. I'm using Arches cold press, 140 pounds, and I'm on the smoother side. But I am going to give this a double stamp because, again, it's watercolor paper and we're going to be heat embossing. I am using, excuse that little break to touch my mouse. I am using Ranger Fine Detail white embossing powder because this is a beautifully detailed flower. You could also, though, and I'm working on it right now, I have two no-line versions that I'm working on with watercolor. And I'm going to move my heat gun, I'm sorry I'm off camera there, around so that the paper doesn't warp. Ultimately, watercolor paper is going to warp, but there was almost a big accident there. Look at that. So excuse my Copics, and I'll explain why they're out in just a minute. So I'm going to wisely move my embossing powder thing. So I'm just placing the stamp in different positions onto the cardstock because I want to make a background. And this particular piece of cardstock, watercolor paper at this point is 4.5 by 6. I think that's what it is, because I cut it from a larger sheet of 9 by 12. And I'm just using it's a flat angled brush from my kids to wipe off any extra embossing powder. So overall, in order to make this, it's pretty easy. I think this is a fantastic set to have. I do recommend highly using a positioning tool. I do have a tremor, and excuse my keyboard, I just noticed that. I'm erasing the notation that I made to myself that this was Arches cold press. I need to fix my paper system so that I'm a little bit more organized. I don't have to put marks on my paper anyway. But I do recommend using a stamp positioner. I always use the Misty. I've always used a Misty, but full disclosure, I am on the Misty design team. But I do think, but I've been using it since before I was on the design team. So I got a little too close here, but you can see the outlines of the white embossing powder. I have some clean, clear water. Those are I like to mix in those. This is a porcelain palette that I really like to use to mix things in. And I have my travel brushes. So now I'm adding a drop of water, and it's just clean, clear water to each of the colors in my Magello Mission 76 color palette. I have also added other colors, Daniel Smith's Roosevelt Marine, Daniel Smith's Quinacridone Coral, and a couple of other colors that I really like for my Daniel Smith palette. I just bought this. I was had to go to Cincinnati, and I roomed with somebody who was using these, and they just looked scrumptious and yummy, and the palette was super light. So when I go to a crafty retreat in 2 weeks, I'm not sure which palette I'm going to take, whether I'm going to take the Magello or I have a travel palette that's a mix of different Daniel Smith and Winsor & Newton and a couple others. Maybe I'll take both and I'll practice. That would be really helpful if I did that because I don't practice often enough. And so that when we get into situations like this, I am probably not doing this right. But anyway, what I'm doing is I'm wetting each area with some clear, clean water and then just adding the pigment and let it spread out on its own. I will come back in later and add some more depth to the nooks and crannies. This is sped up. This card all told took about an hour and a half to make, but I have really sped up this whole video. So I am not ever working on the same flower or excuse me, a flower that's next to one that's still wet. Now, I've gotten way too heavy-handed with, I think this is Rose Madder or it's Permanent Red, one or the other. Way too heavy-handed, especially down there in the bottom corner. So I'm going to come back in now with a smaller brush and some of the same colors and just add darker shades to the nooks and crannies. I could have used my Copics, which will lead me to explain. So while I'm working on a watercolor piece, I do not, sometimes I do. I try not to heat dry it unless I'm in a real hurry, and excuse that blot of sunshine here. It's kind of fickle, and if you're hearing thunder right now, that is because it's getting stormy here. We have a tropical storm warning up. I don't know if this is the first round or the outside waves, but anyway, I digress. So usually put these aside and I work on 2 other projects, usually have them going until I feel that the paper is dry. And you know the paper is dry when it's not cool to the touch anymore. I have an overhead fan in the middle of my room and I have a table there, and I usually just put the pieces there if it's a super humid day, just because otherwise it's just going to take forever. So again, I'm just going in, filling in the nooks and crannies with, it's a number, I think I have a number 2 and a number 4 Escoda Versatile brush that I just had to try them after seeing Catherine Cosin use them at her road trip coloring challenge. So yeah, that's what I'm using. I still kind of like my, I have a couple of real sable brushes that the smaller ones aren't that expensive. It's the big ones that are super expensive. And this is a Da Vinci Cosmetop mix, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you which mix it is. But I have a friend who watercolors all the time, and we were at retreat, and she said, you know, watching you do this, I think you need to use a bigger brush, and a bigger brush that's a sable mix. So this is a sable synthetic mix, and it really wasn't that expensive. I got 2 of them, this number 8 and a number 4, and those are my 2 favorite brushes. But I travel a lot, so I wanted the travel brushes because they're so incredibly light, and if you don't pack the sable brushes correctly, you can kind of make a mess of them. And I don't know. I may still travel with this one because I love it, but I'll see. We'll see. But this is really a beautiful set. I'm not doing it justice here. I do have 2 other projects ongoing with it just because I think it's so beautiful. But there are so many ways to use this. You can cut the flowers apart, build up a bouquet on your own, add extra leaves in. The sentiments are great. I'm adding, yes, some blue to my leaves because I think that looks cool, to have some blue in there and different shades, especially with the embossing there. And that's the other reason why I don't heat dry when I'm embossing. It's because I don't want to potentially lift off or reheat the embossing powder. So that's the other reason why I let them dry. If I'm going to have to speed dry this, I hold the heat gun quite a ways away from the actual design. So we're just going around doing the leaves. You don't have to lift the paper up. I did because my neck was getting sore at this point. I've been working all day on cards, which was so great. I'm not complaining, but I tend to get captivated by what I'm doing, and then I sit at my desk for too long. So I should have grabbed the clipboard that I use, but I didn't. So this is the number 8 brush that I really love, and I'll try and put a link to that. May have to go to my blog to find that link. So here's where I think I made a mistake mixing colors. I mixed two blues, but I kind of desaturated them, desaturated the color mix, and I wish I hadn't done that. I think this would have calls for a softer background. But as I go and as I do things like this, I learn. And so that was why I shared it. I shared it so that you could see what I did wrong. Now, hopefully the next video I will have learned not to do that. Because the colors I think in the original flowers are far less desaturated. If we think of Copic markers, they're in the R1s and the 1s and 2 series. And this blue almost looks more like a B4 or even the B9s, the lighter B9s. And I just think it would have looked better if I had just stuck with, in this, you just use plain old ultramarine instead of trying to mix a color, because that's a fairly vivid pigment in this, as is the cobalt. The cobalt reminds me of the BG Zeros, and because as you dilute it, you can get the spectrum of colors. Anyway, this is mistake number 2. I decided to splat this, okay? Don't. I put on too many. I don't know why I multiply splatted this. So now I think I'm going to cover this up. I'm going to splat some large splats of gold, and I'm using Heidi Swap Gold Color Shine. I don't know if they make that anymore. I will look for it and link to it if I can. And I'm still not covering up my mistakes. So I'm getting my Perfect Pearls out, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is awful. I'm going to splat with Perfect Pearls. So now then I decided that I was just going to paint with my Perfect Pearl mixture, and it's already mixed up with water. So instead of, just mixing up some on the side, I'm going to dip into the actual container of, what am I doing? Actual container of Perfect Pearls. So I've trimmed this down a little bit, and as I said, I'm using a sketch from the first week of October from Freshly Made Sketches that I really thought was cool, and I'm trying to get myself better at making layers of paper, using paper in a dimensional way. So here I'm just piecing things out. The white strip is just a piece of Nina that I dry embossed with an old lattice embossing folder. I think it's by Sizzix, not sure. I will try to find a newer one. I'm sure I won't be able to find this one because that was pretty old. So I'm using some Versamark ink, and I'm going to stamp this down twice. The paper is a Gina K Wisteria. I'll also provide the link on my blog to that. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And we are going to add some of that same white embossing powder so that the sentiment pops up. So I didn't want to add I didn't want to make it in black. I guess I could have, since I used such a desaturated blue, but anyway. So we're going to heat emboss this, and I love watching heat embossing come to life. And it says, "You are the light of my life." And it's that sentiment, that big sentiment, is in the stamp set. So I'm just cleaning the embossing powder off of my desk because, I don't know, I get strays everywhere and I don't want to put it onto my card. So now I'm going to take some 3M tape and put that on there, because the cards, the watercolor paper gets warped. I think it just gets warped regardless. But this is my surefire way to get it to stick down, and to stick down as flat as possible. So I'm just going to position that. I'm not going to put foam tape on that trailing edge yet. I'm just going to stick it down with some Tombow Dots adhesive. It's the permanent ones, and then stick my the white strip there. So in this card design, I think that the emphasis by doing this becomes on the sentiment rather than on the panel itself. So I could have painted a smaller panel or painted a bigger one and then used it had something for more than one card. So right now I'm just adding some clear sequins, and I'm going to use Novo Deluxe Adhesive. Is that what it's called? Yes, that's what it is. And these are just clear sequins in 2 different sizes from Pretty Pink Posh. I just thought I needed those, and then I'm just going to reinforce them with some glossy accents like Kelly Lativola does. And then I colored the strip in the middle with some Wink of Stellar Clear shimmer. And I thought it needed that because there was so much shimmer everywhere else. So here's the card. Thank you for being with us today. Please give the video a thumbs up if you like the card. And as I said, I'll provide links down below. But this really is a wonderful, very versatile set. And I hope to be back again soon with another video for you using this same set. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.